Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, it is my honor and privilege to invite our guests and to welcome them. And I know that they're coming with a couple of things that I personally deem very expensive because I do that in my life. One is time. To me, time is such a misunderstood commodity that we have. But those that are awake, they understand the value of that commodity. And I want to thank you for coming and spend some of that expensive stuff right here at Threads of Enlightenment. The other is your journey. It housed who you were and made you who you are. And you're here to share that with us and allow us to partake of you. Thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you so much, Ken, for having me.
It is an honor. I want you to tell people the things that you have given birth so far, because as I mentioned to you earlier, the perpetual journey will cause you to create more things. But you were pregnant with some stuff as you were going through your journey, and you happen to give birth to this thing called May My Journey of Grace or to Grace. And I can't wait to hear this exciting stuff. Tell us about all those things you
Yeah, so
have.
I think you were explaining something to me. I totally resonate everything that you were sharing with me before we started. As a kid, I just knew there had to be more to life than what I was being shown with school, and my family was always working, and it just seemed like, what is the point of all this? Just didn't seem much joy. And I think I carried a part of that in me that led me to getting I got diagnosed with scoliosis, which is curvature of the spine. And a lot of times I have found the emotion behind the scoliosis is it's an S-shaped curve, mine was. And it's like you're pulled in two directions. So it's like what society was telling me and my family and friends and what I felt something else had to be happening. And but I just went the mainstream medical path, and I ended up having spinal surgery where they put the rods in my back. And then I was lucky that they took them out a year later because usually they leave them in forever. And so I had this, and afterwards I was sick and in pain for about 5 years, and no one knew, nobody had an answer for me. I went to different doctors, no one had an answer, and I just thought I was going to have to live like this. And then I was just, doing what I was supposed to do, go to college so you could be successful. And I wasn't sure what to do with my life. And someone introduced me to chiropractic. And it was just a pamphlet on it. And it said, the power that made the body heals the body. And I thought, wow, all this time, no one has said that to me. And I just went to chiropractic school on that. I didn't even get adjusted. It was like a godsend, And I went there, and it changed my whole life. Changed the way I looked at health, understood how the medical world views health versus how natural healing views health. And I started getting adjusted, but it wasn't a quick fix. It was a journey. And I really feel I had a couple of turning points. One turning point was I lost the fear that I couldn't heal. I think you get in that when you're in so much pain and you're sick all the time, you get in that desperate state that you're not going to get better. And especially when you're not getting a quick fix and nobody has an answer.
Yeah.
So I lost that fear, and I started to heal. So that was number one. And then I can get into later on, I kind of had a grace state moment too. We can talk about. I know you like grace. So.
Pardon all the interesting stuff. We're here in Thailand, and it's really an interesting place when it comes to power and stuff like that. So just bear with us. So yeah, I want you to talk to us about this because that is an interesting intro. I love um, the information about the struggle, even as a young age, that the pull between the family and society. Talk to us about what was your family teaching you or imparting in you, and at that age that eventually caused this struggle with society. What was that information about? What was it
Well, it was just
consist of?
about, I really did not like being in school. And I was an A student. I kind of worried about everything. I would be the kind who would take all my books home because I didn't want to forget something. So I was very much of a worry kind of
Yeah.
person, and I always wanted to, like a perfectionist. to do well, had to do well. I worried about that. And then my mom worked 2 jobs. My family was always working. It was always like there was just enough, like everything's so hard, the getting money, the struggle. And I think they were just more oriented
Yeah.
towards the negative. Now that I look back, it was more like they believed in the struggle, because if you were to take them outside of the struggle, they would be like a dream stealer, like a wet blanket. Oh, you can't do it that way. So it was like this
Yeah.
negative vibe. And then my dad died when I was 12, and I really believe it was because of broken dreams. He was an entrepreneur at heart, and he failed. And I remember he had to go get a job working at a bakery on the night shift. This is when I was like 6 years old. And his energy was just gone for a long time before they actually diagnosed him with cancer. And he passed away
Yeah.
when I was 12. And I felt that he was in a better place than me. I thought, I was raised Catholic. I was told about heaven. And I thought, heaven sure sounds like a utopia. I think he left me here in hell. I think we're in
Yeah.
hell here on earth. And I felt that way very strongly. So I didn't have a fear of death. I kind of wanted to go with him because I thought, I think he's in a better place. But
Mhm.
I was here, and then I ended up
Yeah.
having this surgery. And it was just until I found chiropractic, it was the first time I heard truth. The power that made the body heals the body. And that just really, for me,
Yeah.
started my whole journey to discovering who I was. And, I look back at that. It's not that I don't think I would change anything. Like my dad dying, I feel like he was a much better guide to me in the spirit side than he could have been here in the physical. And my
Mhm.
surgery, I mean, it's totally an unnecessary surgery. I feel sad that people still actually get that done today, but to me, it was a blessing because it freed me. I don't live in fear of disease or getting sick because I know
Yeah.
I can heal myself. It broke that facade, and that's kind of why I wrote the book when we had lockdown 3 years ago, because everybody was in such fear of disease. And I knew there was another way to be. And I thought we need more stories of healing. And I thought maybe it's time to share my story.
Yes.
I didn't feel like my story was finished. I thought I'd do a book later, but life throws us curveballs and you try to make the best of it.
I think when it's time, because a lot of us are pregnant, Doc, with ideas and things. And sometimes these situations happen. I know COVID did. It allowed many to stop and did give birth to books, dreams that were residing within the self. And I believe in chiropractic medicine. I have some beautiful stories with chiropractic adventures, if you will, especially in my family personally. With my son, my youngest son was preemie, and he was having all kinds of seizures and so forth. And I was seeing a chiropractor at the time when he was a young baby. And I remember the medication that we would give this young man would cause him to convulse, and his chest would be popping up in the air. It was such a powerful medication. And as I mentioned, I was seeing a chiropractor at the time, and I was telling him about the story, what was happening with my son. And he was actually one of the trainers for the Olympic trainer back in the day. And he said, bring him to me. And when I brought my son to him, he adjusted my son using me as the catalyst to adjust my son. And I went home, Doc, and tossed the medication away. And I knew everyone in the traditional medicine would have cart me away and throw me and report me to whatever the child services, whatever they call those, to tell me, how crazy I was. But I I knew there was a better opportunity, a better way. Um, the traditional medication is one way. You have other ways. Chiropractic, you have Indian medicine, you have Chinese medicine, you have all kinds of different ways by which one can obtain their healing. It depends on where you put your belief. And so when you switch your belief, it will do wonders for you. But my son, they called him the textbook baby, textbook meaning that once I threw away the medication, every time we went for a test, he was exactly what the
Wow.
textbook said he should be. Height, weight, everything. So they called him the textbook baby, but I didn't tell the physician, the pediatrician, anything until much later what I did. But I absolutely understand what happened to you and the journey that aspect of the, for lack of a better word, the entrance of information into you caused you to switch your fate from one system into another, and you obtain what you needed. So talk to us, Doc, as you were moving through, because uh, you and all of us, we go to our default program. We go to school, college, and all this stuff. Talk to us as this young woman that has, after 5 years, you said you got the pin out of you. How were you managing being a sickly person at the time? You know, you were sick, things are going on. Mentally, what was that doing to you, the individual? What did it cause your being to become and to express as you were living and communicating with those outside of you?
It was a struggle. Like I was very severely depressed. It was just a struggle to get up every day and keep doing what I had to do. But I'm a hard worker. I was taught to be a hard worker. You know, I was almost taught if you're not a hard worker, you're not worthy, you're lazy. So I just pushed through. You know, you push through the pain, you push through like, and I just kept, I guess there was a part of me that just like kept hanging on. Like I always thought college would have been like the light at the end of the tunnel, and it just got worse for me. I got even more sick because I was stressed in college. I didn't have a direction, and I didn't like the experience. So
Yeah.
it really, I think about finding that pamphlet, and it was like the light, like the angels started singing, and it just really saved me on so many levels to find peace, purpose, and to finally physically heal myself.
All right, talk to us about that pamphlet. What did it contain? Because until then, you are default living, if you will. Talk to me about that pamphlet. What information that was in that pamphlet that caused you to make
Yeah,
that
it
shift?
said the power that made the body heals the body. And I just never had anyone share that with
Mm.
me before. And I said, there has to be something to this because I would ask the medical doctors before, I'm like, why do I keep getting sick? You know, I would always get strep throat. I'd always be in pain. I have the sciatica pain. I got chicken pox. Like I just kept getting things. And they'd write me a prescription for an antibiotic, prescription for the painkiller, or a muscle relaxer. I went to physical therapy and nothing worked. And I just kept saying, why do I keep getting sick? And their only answer was, let me write you a stronger prescription. And I'm like, they don't know. They don't know
Yeah.
how to help me. And not one of them mentioned that it could be from the surgery.
No.
That the surgery actually, you know, they took parts of my
Yeah.
spine, they tried to fuse it, and that's the worst thing you can do to a spine. That's your whole nervous system, that's your immune system. I mean, as a chiropractor, I adjust the spine to open up, to clear stress so that the brain body communication is at 100%, right?
Mhm.
So they tried to fuse that down and put all that stress on my nervous system, but not one of them addressed that. So that it was just the power that made the body heals
Yeah.
the body, and thank God it was enough for my mind and to approve, like to be like according to what I was taught would be a good job. You know, it'd be a doctor, it'd be a
Yeah.
legit, you know, degree.
Yeah.
You know, it had to fit into that mold for me to go along. I was so programmed that you need
Yeah.
these things, but yet I was walking two worlds again because chiropractic opened up a whole spiritual side, a
Yeah.
whole nother reality, and it was like a domino
Hmm.
effect of more and more truths because now I was able to question other things because now I knew there was another reality besides what I was taught because now I saw there was another reality to
Yeah.
health. So, but chiropractic let me walk two worlds for a little bit
Yeah.
to play doctor and have my practice. But that's why I even outgrew my practice because I never really got into it to play doctor. I wanted to tell people they can heal themselves because of my own experience. And it wasn't just the adjustment.
Yeah.
The adjustment's part of it, but they're all tools to help you learn to tap into yourself, to calm your mind, to get in tune with yourself, right? They're
Yes.
just, you know, you can work with your diet, you can work with different modalities, but they're all stepping stones to get you back to who you are away from the programming of what all society has told us.
Yeah. Yeah. They, again, as I mentioned, the traditional medication and traditional medicine is one way. Um, I grew up in the healthcare system. I actually came from there. And I remember um, my son got hurt one day, and I walked into the emergency room because I was talking to one of the physicians. And I knew quite a few of them. I was talking with one of them about Jonathan's situation, my eldest son. And I'm watching through my peripheral another doctor, totally lost, and trying to find information to address a situation that he was dealing with in another room. And for the first time in my life, this clarity came to me that these guys don't know anything. And I'm sitting there looking at this, and I switched my focus to him and seeing the frantic look on his face, going through books and so forth. And I realized at that moment that many of the physicians that we give our trust to don't really know anything. They're they're out in the wind just like a lot of people. And I had suffered for many years now. A situation is called H. pylori, and H. pylori was crippling me, and due to stress. Stress was another issue, and we're going to go into that because stress is a mind state, and it will, just like you can heal yourself, you can also get sick. And so I was getting very sick from H. pylori, which was a bacteria within my stomach and so my intestine. So I started going to the doctor. I passed out, fainted, everything. I went to the emergency room. They did a colonoscopy. Finally found what it was. I went for several years. They didn't know what it was. Finally, the colonoscopy, they found it. Give me this regimen of antibiotics, strong stuff. I took the whole period of it, nothing. It was just crippling even more. I began to do some research on my own. I'm like, what can I find? And I found this, it's called Manuka honey out of Australia. And they were talking about the properties within that. And I ordered that thing. And I remember taking a spoonful of that once I got it with probiotics, along with probiotics, that's combination. I took that and I felt in my being, in my stomach, the location where I had all these pain for years, crippling, going on. I felt this intense happening, if you will. And I knew something was going on within my body. And I began to lay down and um, began to focus on my awareness, bring my awareness into the situation. And I knew that these two things that I had taken was battling this bacteria within my stomach. And it disappeared. This has been over 20 years. I've never, ever had to deal with it. There is another way, guys, outside of the programming, as Doc was saying. Talk to us, Doc, as you began to move through yours and began to see the understanding that the body heals itself and your mind began to switch around and change your perspective. As you began to navigate to the other side, talk to me about some of those mindset that you were still accustomed to within your programming, to what was happening with that mindset as you're shifting, moving towards, because I know there's a conversation within yourself as you're
Yeah, so
shifting.
I was learning that in a chiropractic philosophy, they honor that there's an inner wisdom. They called it innate intelligence that is always there. It's
Mm-hmm.
always running your body. It's always healing itself because as we sit here, all our organs are working and we're not controlling it. Can you imagine if you had to consciously control your heart, your lungs, your kidneys, you know, all these functions of your body? If you have a cut on your finger, you don't do it and you couldn't do it. It's like there's millions of
Yeah.
functions every second. So I was understanding that, understanding that symptoms aren't necessarily bad. They're actually the way the body purges itself and rebalances itself. So a fever is a good thing. You know, we're taught to suppress the fever. Where in chiropractic world, we let the fever run its course because that's the way your body burns off everything it doesn't need
Mm-hmm.
so it can bring it back to balance after. And it's a healing mechanism. So I was learning all these things, and at the same time, I had to learn what the medical world learns because I had to pass all these boards to get my license. And I thought, oh my gosh, they really don't know because they just like to label things. So you go in and you tell them you have these symptoms, and they need to know that so they can match it to a label of a disease. They need that disease label in order to give you medication or to cut it out because they're the only two things they learn. They don't learn nutrition.
Yeah.
They don't learn how the body heals. They're not talking about the inner wisdom of the body healing itself. That may be one extra credit class at the end, but that's not their focus. Their focus is on outside in. What can they give you? And that causes 90% of the time more harm. Medicine should really be left to emergency care, and we should only use that as second choice, Whereas chiropractic was learning that healing comes from the inside out. So it was learning these two different things at the same time and having my own personal experience with seeing what they did to my spine, seeing that they didn't know how to help me, and then I started to get better doing these other things. So it was just very profound and deep for me.
And when you notice, because you had within the conversation, you have the little breadcrumbs of stress being mentioned. When you recognize that this was one of your, I guess, one of your mindset that you had to deal with, how did you begin to deal with that knowledge, and what tools did you bring into your space to help you manage your stress?
Yeah, so then I think it was about reading. I feel like it was the next phase was really when I opened my own practice because I got out and opened, like I was ignorance on fire. I wanted to practice pure chiropractic. I didn't want to do insurance. I didn't want to do car accidents. I didn't want to pretend to be a pain doctor so you get more money. So I really wanted wellness. I wanted to adjust the babies. I wanted to tell people they can heal themselves. I really wanted to get out and like, people just don't know. Once they know they can heal themselves, and that the medical world is actually causing them more harm. I got out and opened my practice, and I feel like that's where true life really started to teach me because number one, I felt like not everybody wanted to hear what I had to say, which shocked me. That was the very humbling experience. And number two, nobody taught me about money or business, so I had to figure that out. And I started just questioning relationships. I started questioning my inner peace. I had purpose, but I really didn't have peace yet. So I just started reading. And I know, there was the first 3 years of my practice, I really was studying Yogananda and the autobiography of a yogi. And I got his lessons for like 3 years. Then I was doing that. And I was also going on mission trips to Brazil and India. It was just one or two times a year with other chiropractors. And we would bring chiropractic to that part of the world. And I really started, and practicing, I really started tapping into energy. I realized that we were all energy. It was bigger than us. And I really got to a place where I realized I'm like, there's no disease. It's our belief in the disease and the label. It's about our energy flow. And I questioned, why do some people heal, some people don't? And I realized it's about how much life force is flowing through your body. And I realized what affects that is how happy you are. If you have purpose in life, if you have time to heal, if you're, if you're stressed with money or lack of time or lack of money and you can't even make health choices that you want because you can't afford it, what they term the rat race, that was really suppressing our immune system, our life force. That's why people were dimmed down. The vibration was so low. So I knew it was about getting the energy up, and I tapped into some very high frequencies of energy on my mission trips. And eventually I learned that I tapped into it once I was home, and that was when I entered the grace state. It was like 18 months. I was in this high. It was like falling in love, but there's no other person around. There was no reason for me to be this giddy and high. And I realized, I'm like, oh, this is what we're all looking for. This is the God source within. This is the place that we can all be living from this vibration. And I kind of stayed there for like 18 months by default. And then I had to learn to get there at will. And so that's been my journey now. It's really about, you have to learn to get to the grace state because when you live life from that place, it changes everything. Before I would still feel a desperation, like you want to escape
Mm.
things. Now you just are. And now you can really embrace the
Yeah,
journey of life. Obstacles are just, challenges for you to grow more. They're not like a desperate situation anymore.
yeah, yeah. I like when you get there because I tell people your perspective changed. The wholeness of your perspective changes, meaning that everything that you look at from that space change. The situation that come into the challenges, if you will, that come into your life. When you are in that space, Doc, you look at it totally different. You don't look at it as something burdensome. You look at it as an adventure. You look at it, okay, this is presenting to allow me to grow. What is it that I need to gain from this situation so that I can become even brighter as I move forward in my life? And that's why I tell people the creator that is inside of you is excited when those challenges come because it gives it an opportunity to shine and show you who you are. But many of us panic, and that fearful part of us will drift back into the fear. Why? Because, as you said, we're in this the default mode, if you will. And when we're in the default mode, you just drift back there. But you got into this and I tell people traveling is a good tool by which you can get there. It really is traveling and serving um, people that cannot um, give you back anything. When you're around that energy constantly, doctor, that's where you kind of elevates you to that space um, faster, if you will. Talk to me about some of those trips because I know that's when you began to um, see the dichotomy within the world, one that have a lot, one that doesn't, and the ones where they have nothing, there's a little more joy, there's a little more happiness, there's a little more freedom from stress. Talk to us about what you were seeing in those
So
journeys.
I went to Brazil 3 years in a row, and there was a group of us chiropractors who went, and we just adjusted people all day long. And I didn't speak Portuguese, so it wasn't like they could tell me all their problems. So it was more powerful because they just got on the table. I felt their
Yeah.
spine. I adjusted the areas that I felt needed it,
Mm-hmm.
and they got off. It was one after another. And the energy, and we were all lined up, chiropractors doing this.
Yeah.
Hundreds of people coming through all day. It was like for a week, for like 8 to 12 hours a day. And the energy was so profound. We were in this like love bubble. But then when I got home, I
Yeah.
crashed because I couldn't keep that vibe. But I felt something. But I didn't know how I got
Mm-hmm.
there. I didn't know what happened,
Yeah.
and I couldn't keep it. When I got, it was very high to very low. And the second year in Brazil, nothing profound happened, but I did get to observe Brazilians had a soul that I felt like here in America we didn't have. They still enjoyed life, and I didn't see that
Yeah.
in the American culture. There was just this natural happiness that they were still a part of. And then I went to India one year, and
Yeah.
same thing. It was a chiropractor who had family there, and we went to Calcutta, and it was really the poorest part of India, right? And Brazil made me kind of hate American culture. Like I felt we were too materialistic, but then India was so poor materially in that area. The pollution was so bad. There was so much chaos that it made me appreciate the
Mm.
American culture. So I was having these energetic experiences
Yeah.
and also the observation of the cultures, and it just made me appreciate the balance of what I had in my life, right? It's neither good or bad. There's pros and cons to everything, and it's how we view it.
I agree. There's I think I tell people there's an art in living, and I call it contentment. That when, I've had money, I was without money. Um, I had, some money. So I know the dichotomy about things. But what makes one happy is a state of contentment where all of that outside doesn't matter. stressor in, but I understand exactly what you're talking about in traveling. When you get to see these vast things, it makes you appreciate um, America for certain things. And I am from Guyana, which is a neighbor to Brazil, and our mindset to life is much different than Western America, in the sense where uh, um, the things that makes one happy in that culture in America, the people will look at it and shun it, just look at it like if something's wrong with us. But when you live in that state, it really is a different lifestyle. So here you are exposing yourself and seeing dichotomy. You're growing, you're gaining wisdom, you are excelling in your field, seeing that energy is the way by which we are existing in this uh, plane housed within this body. As you begin to now switch, because you're learning in your travels that energy is the key. When you begin to switch that into quote unquote Western civilization practice, how did it go? When you're dealing with some of your clients and stuff like that, when you're now addressing energy versus when they are programmed for something
Yeah,
else.
just sharing, that I was just trying to make people understand the mind body connection that, I can adjust you all day long, but you got to do the inner work. You have to be aware of your mindset and your energy flow because you're dictating how your body's healing by how much joy you're feeling each day, how much stress you're experiencing each day, how happy you are in your life, and um I felt like majority of people just wanted me to I think they just like to come in, they like to vent their problems, they want to get adjusted because it feels good and they've moved on. I didn't feel that there was a lot of people who were really changing their lives doing the work, and that was a little frustrating for me. And
Yeah.
that was
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how that made you feel as a person knowing that this is the way and seeing that no one is really paying attention to the wisdom that you've gained, the insight that you've gained, and you know this is what they need in order to move them from where they're at. How did that begin to affect you
I
as
think
an
because
individual?
I realized I struggled for a long time because I realized I outgrew my practice and I didn't want to be there anymore. I felt very stifled by it.
Mhm.
I found a way to help people. Like I have an online business where I could help people to get healthy habits, to work on finances, to work on mindset. And I thought I could do more by helping people become independent in their lifestyle than I could adjusting them all day long. But there was a lot of guilt I felt because I thought I am a chiropractor. I should be practicing. I'm going to let my people down. I'm going to let my family down by closing my practice. So there was a lot of internal struggle again I went through to get to the place where I finally closed my practice and followed my dream to leave my hometown of Delaware and move to Miami. I just felt the pulse of Miami and wanting to do my online business and really um, just share my message. I wanted to really I love sharing my message. I feel like that's the most powerful thing I can do. And then to give people resources to start doing the work for themselves because I feel like it has to come from within. And that was my evolution. But for many years, I struggled with, oh, well, I have to be a chiropractor. I started this practice and I have to be here for people. It was a lot of that. So that was part of my journey too, to follow my passion. I had to have the courage to follow my passion and not do what society and family thought I should be doing. And it was the best choice I ever made.
Talk to me about that journey, because that's a difficult journey where anyone that is making the switch, because you have to now switch from the mind to the heart and living from the heart versus living from the mind. So now here you're making this switch, and I tell people living from the heart is it's this beautiful madness. It is um, it is a life of faith. You have to take the leap and forget all the programming, everything that you've learned. talk to us about that switch, because everyone has to surrender. How did you get there? And what was your surrender like when you had to make this heart mind switch?
The surrender, I think for me, it's when you can't do it anymore. I feel like the pain became, for me, the
Yeah.
pain of staying was greater than the fear of going. So I went, and
Yeah.
I discovered, I actually found, I feel like my soul is so filled up because of the journey that I took that I couldn't get from living in my hometown of Delaware. My soul was calling for something else. And I realized, and that's the gift that my father gave me of dying young, that I kind of don't have that fear as much as other people. I have it, but because I guess at 12, I lost everything when I lost him, in a sense. So he taught
Yeah.
me the
Yeah.
surrender. And there's more to life, and there is nothing better than following your dreams and following your heart and risking it all. It really, you have to, that's the way I think we were meant to live. And to me, there's no other way. I couldn't stay in a humdrum every day. When you start feeling like every day is just, it's the same old, you're not living. Like you want to find your purpose and your
Yeah.
passion and follow what makes you happy. It might not have to look drastic, but you want to start really tapping into what makes you happy.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, we're not taught that we should be doing that, but that's everything.
Yeah. We are. Yeah. It is life. It is life to get there. It is the way that one should live. I always encourage people to find your purpose and become purposeful, because until then, you're just, this coach ruined my, and I don't want to say ruined my life. He interrupted my life when he said, if I am working for someone, I am working for someone's dream, and mine is
Mm-hmm.
put aside. It troubled me. It lodged within me. And so when I would go to work, it would disturb me. It just kept disturbing me that I was making someone else's dream possible while mine was dying. And I remember that journey, and everyone must come to the space of surrender. In order for you to do it, the only reason why you're not doing it is because you're afraid. I don't know if there's anything else. Is there anything else, Doctor, you can think of that kept you there? Because we're afraid of what's beyond that.
You mean kept me in the practice?
Yeah, for me, I was afraid of the things that they were telling me that I couldn't do, which was number one, I couldn't support myself. That's one of the main lies that they tell you, to keep you over there. A salary is a way to keep you from pursuing your dream. And so they'll tell you these type of lies. And the fear from moving from the secure to the unsecure, if you will, or the unknowing, it was fearfulness that kept me from it until I decided, like I got to the place where, what the hell, who cares? And just jumped, you know. So, but it was fear that kept
I
me
think that's
from
the
not
beauty of
jumping.
the journey is that you have to be willing to risk it all because when you do, you find other ways to support yourself that you never could have thought of. Different ways. Life unfolds
Yeah.
according to what your soul needs. That's what I believe. Some people find success right away. Some
Yes.
people find maybe more struggle, but that's what your soul needs to experience in order to awaken to those areas. So that's why everybody's journey looks different.
Yes.
And it's about really surrendering and being okay with what shows up. That's a day-to-day practice, right? Being okay with what shows up and surrendering to following your guided inspiration to act on that every day to the best that you can and trust that it's all unfolding and working out for what you need. Because sometimes you don't really see why that happened until maybe a year later or hindsight, like, oh, that was the perfect piece for me to have this understanding right
Yeah.
now. So it's about faith, and it grows you
Yeah.
exponentially on a soul level when you can let go of the expectations and really follow your guided inspiration. That's that's a skill.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. It's something you acquire in your journey. And that's why I tell people, those that are looking for instant gratification, you're not going to do it and you're not going to get it there. So talk to us as you are. How did COVID come into your life when all this is going on? Because um, did you have this book in you at that time? When it was churning there before COVID, were you thinking about it? What was going on with you in relations to the book?
Well, when they locked us down immediately, it's 3 years ago today, actually, I was horrified. I knew this wasn't right. This isn't how healthcare works. This was more about tyranny. And I was very upset that everybody around me was okay with it and they were afraid of some disease getting them. And I thought, oh my God, I cannot believe the state of mind that people live in. I mean, I understood it because of my practice for 18 years. I knew a lot of people didn't want to hear. They really live in a disease world and you can't break that. And I always thought, well, that's their own personal journey that they have to come to come to terms with on their own. But now my freedom was being taken away because everybody was living in fear. So I just thought the most positive thing I could do at the time was write my story of healing, how I healed myself. And I didn't have any fear right now.
Mhm.
So I thought if everybody felt like me, this wouldn't be happening. But it also derailed everything I was building. I had built up a network for 3 years and really building my online business really at a critical point. Like I felt like I was reaching a critical mass where I was gaining success. And then I lost everything I was doing because I lost all my networking events and nothing was coming back. And I lost a lot of people
Yeah.
because they didn't like that I was speaking up, that this isn't right. So there was this split. And it's interesting because I didn't see this coming, right? So this is like you can't plan for it. But I was in an area where I was able to get involved. I really started studying the Constitution, which I never maybe would have. I was really big in studying the economy. And I like understanding how money flows because the
Hmm.
same as way as health flows. I thought these are energies that control our lives. Like we need to understand them so we can make peace with them and really find freedom.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of pieces, but I didn't ever had the governmental piece. And I really started studying the Constitution and learned a lot. And then I understood that it was about getting involved locally to really see if the people in your local government, if your mayor and your commissioners are following what the Constitution says. This is how it's not about party politics for me as much as Constitution versus communism. And
Yeah.
I found a lot of people who were ready, wanted to get involved that way too. And we made a big difference in these last elections. We're really cleaning up our election system here.
Mhm.
We made some headway. We were getting involved with the school boards
Yeah.
and seeing what they were doing. And it was such an amazing experience to be a part of being involved with the community. And then this led me to having to learn to rebuild my business in a different way. And now I'm getting on these podcasts and I, my joy is sharing my message like this. And I feel that it's more critical than ever now because I believe we're at a turning point in our world of really raising the consciousness
Yeah.
to remember who we are. Like all those things I learned before, we were just scratching the surface. Like it's starting to reach a critical mass where people are starting to wake up and remember who we are and getting rid of these old social structures that really aren't don't have our best interest and don't serve us and our evolution. So we're at this shift right now, and I thought you have to trust that you're put where you're meant to be to learn what you need to learn and to follow your
Yes.
soul's purpose.
I absolutely agree. Talk to me about your journey to grace because I love that phrase, word grace. And what does that word encompass for you when someone says grace? What do you picture in your mind, in your being? How does it comfort you?
Grace is that it's a bliss state. It is where you raise your frequency above human narrative, human consciousness, regular 3D human consciousness, and you're in this state where everything is blessed, that even the problems that you see in humanity aren't problems anymore. It's almost like things that you're concerned with in your mind, I call it the monkey mind, are just laughable. They're laughable because you just see
Hmm.
that we're all love, we realize that we are love. We are divine beings. We are God. God is in us, and we are expressions of that divinity. And that we're here to just have this journey, really, where I see myself as a spiritual being having a human experience. It's just like you realize you're in this movie or you're playing a part. And it's just kind of silly what we get caught up in. It's like you step outside your little drama
Yeah.
and it's grace. Everything's okay. Everything's love. Everything's just, you're just in love with everything. And that's where my check-in point now. Like I realized like it might have been more of an extreme when I first got there, but I did stay there for like a year and a half consistently. But then after I realized I knew how to get back there. It was about focusing on what makes me happy. If I find myself caught up in the struggle, just stop, wait for the guidance, take a breather. I look
Mhm.
for times in my day to find relief from anytime I get caught up in a struggle or a problem. Just
Yeah.
step back, wait for the inspiration. What can I do to make myself happy right now? It might be just enjoy a nice cup of coffee. It might be go take a walk. It might read a good book. You know, it's like finding those joys in your day to just be. And then you get inspired. And I always try to act
Yeah.
from my inspiration or when I feel that motion to go, you know, and that's an everyday thing. And that's the work.
Yeah. It is a beautiful work. And those that are listening to us, it is a beautiful work. And we welcome you to come and join this journey to grace. And it's a great place to live from. It truly is a great place to experience because every conversation you have with yourself is different, with others is even more different. It's meaningful, it's joyful. I love interacting with myself. I really do. Sometimes I see some deep things or thoughts will come in, and I will be meditating on those thoughts for several days as that insight begins to expound and grow and grow. And after several days, there's this smile that comes onto your face as you got an understanding of a new aspect of who you are and what you're capable of. It's a beautiful journey. So we invite you, Doc and I invite you to come and walk with on this journey to grace. I want to thank you so much for coming and sharing with us here at Threads of Enlightenment. This has been a powerful journey and a powerful story. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much,
It's a
Ken, for
pleasure.
having me. This was amazing.
Thank you, Doc.